Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on the Where You At podcast, my goodness, am I excited because we are talking about what it's like to be a screenwriter. Our guest is Beall, and he took a fascinating path to becoming a screenwriter. He was an English major at San Diego State. He wrote for the Daily Aztec. He was my managing editor when I was editor-in-chief. Before that, he was city editor. Then he became a cop. Yeah, he was a police officer in Los Angeles. Then he wrote a book called LA Rex. We'll probably talk about that. Then he wrote for the TV show Castle, and now he primarily writes movies. He wrote Gangster Squad. He wrote Justice League. He wrote Aquaman. That was the #1 movie in America at one point. He wrote Bad Boys Ride or Die. He most recently wrote Axel F. That is the most recent Beverly Hills Cop franchise movie. A good friend of mine, Beall. Thank you and welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here. Great to see your face.
Well, I never know where to begin these podcasts, but I think I want to start with this, especially with the background that I just said, the different jobs that you had. When you were 18, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, what were you thinking you were going to do when you were a freshman at San Diego State?
The short answer is I wasn't. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do. I was thinking about the girls who lived down the hall in Toltec. There was a time up until I was about 13 when I thought I was going to be a Disney animator. Mm-hmm. That was because I thought I went to St. Mary's Elementary School in Walnut Creek, California. It's still there. And in 1982 or whenever it was, like, I was the best artist at St. Mary's Elementary School, like, hands down. And loved comic books and loved Disney movies. And I thought, like, 100%, that's what I'll do. And it was the kind of thing where people are like, oh man, this kid's got talent, blah, blah, blah. And we happen to know the only person that I knew that was even remotely connected to show business was a guy who was an animator. He'd worked like all Saturday morning cartoons that you and I grew up on. And then he eventually went to work for Don Bluth, who was the guy who did American Tail and Secret of Nim and, a million other ones. He'd sort of split off from Disney. So he was really doing it. He was a family friend. He'd grown up with my mom and he came to visit us. And I didn't tell my parents I was going to do this. I had this portfolio put together of like my best stuff, my best like buffed guys with swords and, that kind of crap that I had. I was like, hey, Jeff, I want to show you because I want to do what you do. And he's a great guy, still in touch with him. And so he came back to my room and I showed him the thing and he looked at it and I was sort of waiting. And I was imagining that he was going to say, oh my God, you've got so much, definitely pursue this. You got it, kid. Can't wait to, see you on the other side. And he looked at it and he said, I know I'm supposed to tell you, you should keep working on it and follow your dreams or whatever. I was like 13. He's like, I'm telling you right now, it's never going to happen. You don't have it. You don't have it. Won't ever happen. And I remember like feeling like I was going to cry for a second, but then also on some level being aware that even then I had some sense I was being given a gift because I'm like, this guy's telling me straight. And I could have wasted a lot of time going after something that I just don't have the talent to do. It's not, you can't, I think with that kind of art, I do think it is something you either have or you don't. I mean, I think there's a skill, but it's not like screenwriting or writing where you can just bang on a thing over and over and over again until it's something. So after that, I remember thinking, okay, I'm not going to do that. What am I going to do? I had at that time, somebody, my mom or someone had bought me the illustrated screenplay for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I still had it until this recent fire in the Palisades. It was like a big kind of, not a coffee table book, but a large, like, 9 by 13 thing. And the illustrations were the storyboards from the movie. So it was the screenplay, which I had never seen before that. And then the illustrations on the other page were storyboards corresponding to the scene. And I remember being fascinated because the character Dietrich, who's one of the bad Germans, had like a robot arm in the storyboards. And I was like, oh, wow. So they must have abandoned that at some point. I just thought it was so interesting. And I'm like, maybe I'll do this. I can do this. And so even though I took like a roundabout way to do, crazy cockeyed route to doing it, like I really have wanted to do this since I was like 13.
So one of my memories of Will is that he was always reading as a student. We'd be in the Daily Aztec office. Maybe he's waiting on the proofs to come back to copy edit. And he's got a book, paperback. He was just always reading. I remember that specifically. I also have this vague memory that you were always writing, that you had some type of journal where you were just always writing. And I'm wondering just the early part of your life of constantly reading words and constantly writing, even if it doesn't lead to something immediately, how that helps make you a better writer to this day.
I mean, look, I loved to read. I absolutely loved it. In the 80s, in middle school, I mean, it was still St. Mary's, but 7th and 8th grade, somewhere like that. I discovered Stephen King and Dean Koontz and like those guys, super imaginative thriller horror guys. I loved all that stuff. Clive Barker. I just read anything I could get my hands on. I used to go to used bookstores and just grab any goofy paperback. And I did, like I consumed them like crazy. I don't think there is any better way to learn to write than to read people who are better than you at writing. And for me, to this day, I have not read many screenplays. I think screenplays are ugly to look at. They're sort of, they're sort of a schematic, right? They're almost like, it almost looks like it's like a blueprint or something. They're just crummy. I much prefer novels, and I get accused of overwriting novelistic descriptions of stuff in screenplays. So yeah, I read like crazy. That was a big help to me. And I just loved it. To this day, I love it. I don't do it as much as I used to because kids and all that stuff. But and I wrote compulsively also short stories. I came close to publishing one when I was at San Diego State, and I wrote a whole novel, 300 and some pages, that also burned up in the fire.
Oh no!
But I kept it because I did it before I graduated, and it was terrible, absolutely terrible. I was like, I thought for sure I was going to find an agent and a publisher or whatever. It went nowhere. And I kept it around because I was like, this is, this can lead to that. Like you eventually can find your way to, and that's always been my process, is to just kind of write and hope it doesn't turn out. And then if it turns out, you change it,
Well, part of your early writing also was at the Daily Aztec. I know the answer to this question, but most people listening to this podcast do not. You were an English major. Why did you start writing for the Daily Aztec, and how did it help your future self?
Because I fell in love with a girl named Libby Augusta, who was writing for the City Desk, and was trying to get next to her any way that I could, and yeah, so that was it. Like that was the whole reason for being there.
And I can remember this because it was like, all right, Will, if you're going to be in this office enough, we might as well put you to work.
Yeah,
so
that was kind of what happened. Yeah. Okay, write an opinion thing or something. You're just hanging around at this girl's desk.
Yeah. There's a computer. Go write something.
Exactly.
How does the combination of writing English, right? You're writing poems, you're writing different essays as an English major, and then you're writing fact-based journalism or sometimes opinions. How does the combination of writing English and journalism ultimately help you become a better writer?
It's two things. Deadline is one, right? We were always under deadline pressure. I remember from you all the time. And then I also remember, and then I think just the act of doing it over and over and over again. And having somebody like having peers edit you and learning to live with that was a huge skill that, like, even now I haven't completely developed, but I have a thicker skin than I did 30 years ago.
You need it in your industry, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Who's the tougher editor, the president of Universal or me?
You, 100%. 100%.
Any stories from the Daily Aztec that you remember fondly, whether it was the process of writing the story, getting the story, that kind of stand out, that just make you kind of proud of the work that you did on something?
Well, I remember that the first SEPA convention that I remember attending with you, we were booked into the same hotel as the Miss Teen USA pageant.
Right. Yes.
I think that was somebody's tactical blunder.
Right.
And
I'm actually disappointed that you've not used that in any of your scripts. That someone shows up to a hotel and there's a Miss Teen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a statute of limitations is up on, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember loving covering crime. I thought that was I really loved that, and that is really, it was a tragic event, but covering Andrea O'Donnell's murder, whatever year that was, she was a San Diego State student that was murdered. The only one that, the whole time we were in school, I believe. It was sort of an odd case because it was a domestic thing and the guy fled and they caught him somewhere up in Northern California. I think he'd been using her ATM card and I think he was like to buy drugs or something. He was all messed up. And they brought him back to San Diego. And I don't know if you remember this, but I went to county jail like that Saturday and just put myself on the list to visit him. And went through and like talked to him through the plexiglass thing with those little phones they had. I don't know if they still do that. And had an exclusive interview with this guy before he even had his attorney. And everything he told me was BS, right? It was like top to bottom. It was nonsense. But I didn't know that at the time. And I pursued a bunch of his sort of bogus leads because he was claiming he was innocent. He said, her landlord was obsessed with her. I went kind of blundering around like I was Atticus Finch or something, and talked to the landlord, and she had been strangled, and the landlord had terrible James Coburn kind of arthritis, and I was like, well, that guy didn't do it, and I don't know if you remember this, but I ended up, so I wrote the story. I had the exclusive, nobody in town, not the Union Tribune, nobody ever talked to that guy. Blundered into the investigation in ways that angered the homicide cops. Ended up having to testify at the guy's trial.
I remember that.
Which was complicated. It was really just to establish that this guy was an adroit liar. And then he ended up, Andres English Howard was his name, and he hung himself in jail the night before his sentencing. And the guy, the deputy DA who was prosecuting the case at the time, a guy named Pete Gallagher, went on to be a judge. I think he's retired now, called me that night at home and said, hey, I just want to let you know, when you hear from me, this guy killed himself. And I was like, I was really messed up. He took me out for a beer. And I was like, I don't think I can be a journalist. This is too much. I got too close to it and I'm participating. And, he was like, all these homicide cops wanted to kick your ass. And he's like, and they're also if he's going to do all this stuff, why doesn't he just put on a badge? And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that for a while, be a cop and, write about being a cop. And so that was how I took that turn.
And I remember thinking, why does Will want to be a cop? He's such an incredible writer. Okay, you do you, boo, but why would you want to do this when you have such a gift for writing? So tell us about writing the book LA Rex, because you basically did this while you were a cop, and sort of the process and how that book kind of launched the next phases of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I loved working in as a cop in South Central Los Angeles. I loved it. I was especially my time in black and white and gangs and stuff. I didn't like homicide as much because you kind of already know the ending to the story, but and I honestly I would have done that. I would have done that for another 10 years. I would have done it for 20 instead of 10 if I could have. But I was writing just like when I was at the Daily Aztec, I was compulsively filling up yellow legal pads like a journal sort of. I'd come home and I'd be like, this crazy thing happened, and I remember these details, and I'd fill them all up. When I was sitting in court, I would do it. When I was just, I don't know, just sort of a compulsion I had, is I had all this stuff, and I had this idea of writing a memoir, and then I looked at it and was like, oh no, we'll all go to federal prison if I do that. So let's, and not, I'm not Denzel Washington or anything, but it was just, people colored outside the lines a little bit. And so I fictionalized it, turned it into this novel, and had this whole crazy, like, I was working full time. I think at that time I was working homicide or something. So I was not in any position to go hunting around. I had finished the thing. I wasn't in any position to go hunting or shopping it around anybody. I didn't have time. But I met a guy at a dinner party, and I was holding forth about, like, I was telling some story about something that had happened at work, and he said, hey, I'm a publisher and I'm looking for crime fiction. I was like, hey, it's funny, I wrote a book. I sent it to him. He called me a couple of days later and was like, I love it, I want to publish it. And I was like, that's amazing, I got a publisher. And he had like a little sort of deal memo, and it was like 10 grand or something. It was like a decent amount of money for at the time, I thought. And so I went to meet him, and then it was like, in the publishing house was like, this is not what I imagined. I thought it was in New York, or publishing's in New York or whatever. This is a storefront in Santa Monica, and it looks like you're publishing like how to win at poker books and stuff. Like, this seemed kind of it seems kind of goofy. What it turned out is really the guy was trying to break into the movie business. And so what he was wanting to do was very smart. He was like, I can have a piece of material that I own a piece of, and then I can shop that around, and people will adapt the book into, right. So, and once I figured that out, I was like, I don't know if you're the guy. He became very, he said, oh my God, no, what are you doing? You're walking away from this thing. You don't have anything else to jump to. You don't have and I said, well, yeah, I don't. I can't get into this thing until I have an agent, or I don't even have an agent. And so he knew a literary agent, and put me in touch with, put the fox in charge of the chicken coop, because the guy called and said, oh, hey, I'm so-and-so. This guy asked me to call you and tell you what a great guy he is, and you should publish with him. I was like, okay, now you've done that. And he's like, I said, look, for the sake of argument, let's say this thing that I've written is like, as good as most things out there, and maybe better than some. And he's like, maybe he wouldn't be my first choice. He's like, send me the book. I'm going to New York this weekend. I'll read it on the plane. At that time, it's like I had got it. There was no PDF, no nothing. I was like Kinko's, right?
Right.
I handed him this manuscript. He flew to New York. He called me back and said, hey, Will, this is Mark. And he's like, this is the part where we bleep John Smith in the and I was like, what do you mean? He had a 2-book deal from Penguin.
Wow.
Yeah, he flew in the weekend, came back. He's like, I got a 2-book deal from Penguin Publishing.
When it comes to writing fiction, some people's brains are just wired one way, and some people's brains are wired another way. I remember one time trying to write a fiction book, and there was something about just when I could just follow the truth, my brain knows where to go. And then once I could write anything, I didn't know how to write a thing. How does your brain work when it comes to writing any type of fiction, whether it's this book and then the TV shows and movies that we'll get into here? Just how does your brain operate in the realm of, I can write pretty much anything here, this is fiction?
Well, I think part of it is that books, comic books, movies, when I was growing up, were a really important escape for me. Really important. They meant so much to me, and I lived so much of my life in them and through them, that the writing fiction, I still have that pleasure of escape. It's like I get to return to that world. And because I mean, that's the most fun part of the job, I mean, like going to premieres and stuff is fun or whatever, but like the most fun part of the job is the writing. Like it's pleasurable. I love doing it. And I that to me is like the great for me, like it's not any big secret. It's just that it's so much fun for me. It was so much fun for me to read the stuff, so much fun for me to go to the movies, and I had so many great experiences growing up, going to, I could still remember movies where I sat, what I was doing, what snacks I got. I remember my stepbrother, we went to see the Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon, the one with the Queen soundtrack, right? The one amazing.
Right.
And as it's a kind of tongue-in-cheek movie, but at whatever age I was, 8 or something when I saw it, it was mind-blowing. And it was a pivotal moment, really exciting thing. Flash is piloting he's on this sort of kamikaze thing with the big spaceship at the end. He's about to like impale Max von Sydow with the thing on the nose of the ship. And my stepbrother he just went and dumped his giant Coke in my stepdad's lap and got him stood up. But yeah, so that's like it's just so much fun, it's and like I was saying, like when you're working a homicide, or even sometimes any other times as a police officer, like reality is crummy, bad guys win, good people get hurt and maimed and killed. And so it's fun to be able to fix it.
When you write a movie like Aquaman, I'm curious about the process. Tell us about, do you just go and buy every Aquaman comic book, every cartoon, every previous movie? Like, what's the research that you do on Aquaman and the other characters so that you can make sure that you give the proper historical connotation for this, but then also whatever type of modern twist that you want to give also?
Well, with Aquaman, I had written a Justice League or an early draft of Justice League before that. And I was always a big DC Comics guy, not Marvel as much. Batman was my favorite. An executive at Warner Brothers, after I had delivered this, it was years later I guess it was a while later after I delivered this Justice League, said, I have this new project for you. You're not going to believe it. Hang on to your hat. I can't tell you over the phone, but come in. And I told my wife, I was like, they're going to give me Batman. It's going to be like, they're going to start a new Batman franchise. Now, Dark Knight Rises was done. I can't believe it. I'm going to get to write a Batman. I walked in there 100% sure he was going to say, we want you to write the next Batman movie. And he's like, we want you to write Aquaman. And I was like, Aquaman? Aquaman's dumb. He just was not my favorite character. But I went in and started with all the stuff by Jeff Johns, who I ended up working with on the movie. He's a comic book writer, graphic novel guy who his two sort of, I think, biggest contributions to the canon of like DC Comics are he did an amazing run on Green Lantern. And he took Aquaman and turned him from like kind of a jokey character into a really cool character. And they had already cast Jason Momoa. I wrote the first draft of the script. And it's my process is wonky. I'm just kind of just going. It's almost like I do it like I'm writing a novel. I just like, and I wrote the first draft. A lot of that stuff that's in that first draft made it into the movie. But then they literally went through, and this is how these movies go. They went through 18 writers, or I think I was 1 and 18 or maybe 1 and 17. They might've had a guy after me, and they called me back and they said, we got a director, we got this guy, James Wan, and we want to bring you back. We feel like you're the guy to, so it came back. And at that point, they had sort of honed it into something. And James Wan had very specific ideas about what he wanted. He's super talented visual guy. And it was really fun because we sat in this conference room, me and Jeff Johns and James Wan, while he acted out the whole movie. He knew exactly what he wanted. This little guy, and then Aquaman grabs the trident, and the Kraken swats him with his tentacle, and this director guy would sort of hurl himself across the conference room, and like it was amazing. And I was writing. My assistant at the time's taking notes, and then what he had very clear ideas on that one about sequences and scenes and like moments. And the trick was like, how do you build a hopefully emotionally satisfying story and incorporate all of those? So it ended up being I think it's kind of like the Odyssey or something, right? He goes on this sort of quest that takes him all around the world, and he comes back home. Yeah, it was fun.
You said that you just write. Some instructors might say you need an outline, you need a paragraph about each one of your characters. You need to come up with Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3 and all the scenes, and maybe Post-it notes, big, huge storyboards, Post-it notes, color coordinated. What's your process? You just write?
Look, I think that is a better way to do it. And anybody who's listening, that's how you're supposed to do it. And my advice is to do it that way. Don't do it the way I do it, which is on the most recent thing that I worked on, I'm terrible at outlines. I hate them. I hate them worse than screenplays. And mine end up being either too long or too short. The last one I turned in this outline, this beat sheet, whatever you want to call it. The producer flipped out and called my agent and said, it looks like he did it the night before. What in the hell is this guy doing? So he was very upset. He's a big producer. He was cordial and, he was nice about it, but you could tell he didn't dig it. Paying you a lot of money. And what is this? And I said, look, I'm a guy who finds it in the draft. Like that's the way I work, is I get in there and kind of find it as I go. And I somehow got arranged with this guy. I was like, because the clock was ticking. They kind of knew they wanted this movie shoot it at a certain time, release it at a certain time. I said, I'll give you 20 pages a week. Or 20 pages every 10 days or something. And it ended up being the best process I've ever had, because it incorporated the way I do it anyway, which is to like write and sort of figure out, okay, you've sort of put yourself in the guy's you're sort of in the scene with the guy and sort of playing around. It's like a video game, right? Like it's an open world. He goes through here and it also, because I was handing them sort of like chapters, right? It forced me to put like kind of a whammy sort of cliffhanger about every 15 pages, because I wanted them to be impressed and to feel like they wanted to see the next thing and let me keep going, which is how you should do it anyway. A movie should sort of have that and that rhythm. And it turned out to be the best process, the smoothest I've had ever. I'll never be able to talk somebody into doing that again, but it was great. And that's, my process is I just kind of go.
Has that movie come out? Are you allowed to tell us? Is that a secret?
That movie is Roadhouse 2. And it's a sequel to the Jake Gyllenhaal Roadhouse on Amazon that came out, I think it was last year, that I loved. And I feel like Top Gun Maverick and that Roadhouse are like two of my favorite movies in the last 20 years probably. So Roadhouse 2, I think it's about to announce like a director in the next few days, I think. And I think they'll shoot it, I think in the spring, not the spring we're in now, but maybe the fall. I can't remember, but that one I think is going to go. That'll be the next movie.
Well, one of my favorite movies over the last 30 years is Beverly Hills Cop. And the excitement that I got when I'm on my couch to watch the new Axel F from the franchise, and I see written by Will Bell, and I say, my friend wrote the new Beverly Hills Cop movie, which is so cool. And I want to start by asking you, when you get assigned this, when you're writing this, how much are you told, like, these actors have agreed to reappear, or this actor's health is this way, this is what someone's physical capabilities are, and how much do you have to take that into account when you sit down to write the new Beverly Hills Cop movie?
Oh, that's a great question. That sort of evolved. There has been, I think it's happily sort of going away, but there has been a trend in Hollywood, I think, of taking sort of beloved franchise characters and deconstructing them. And I knew I didn't want to do that. And Jerry Bruckheimer didn't want to do that with Axel. So we just wanted to make a Beverly Hills Cop movie, like a worthy sequel to the original. So my approach was I wanted everybody in it that I could get in it. I knew that it wouldn't really be a Beverly Hills Cop movie without Rosewood and Taggart in it. And everybody in it is playing their age. They're not CGing people. Everybody's old. And so nobody had to do anything that, a person their age couldn't do. And I even had, bless his heart, like John Ashton, I think was probably sick while he was filming, but it didn't let nobody knew about it. He was great and game to do anything. Gilbert Godfrey, who is in the second one, that character was in my screenplay and he died before we started shooting. So I had to take him out. My approach to any of these sort of franchise characters, whether it's like Mike and Marcus in Bad Boys or Axel Foley or whoever, it's like the Hippocratic Oath, right? Like first do no harm. Mm-hmm. Like I just don't want to do any damage to what's there. And I wanted to deliver, if we could, a movie that had some of the fun of the original. It was one of the great theatrical experiences of my life, going to see that in the theater with an audience. Martin Brest, the director, did, in my opinion, back-to-back perfect movies. He did the first Beverly Hills Cop, and then he did Midnight Run. And those are both flawless pieces of entertainment. And I admire him a lot. And so, yeah, and it was intimidating because you have to pitch to Eddie Murphy, right? You have to
well, tell us about that. How do you pitch Axel to Axel? Yes, please.
Well, this was during the pandemic. And so it helped that Eddie Murphy's like as big as a postage stamp on my laptop. I think if it had been in person, I think I don't know what I would have done, but and pitching for me is the worst part of the job. It's very, it's very challenging. It's like, because you're asking a writer to be an actor, sort of. You would be very good at it. I'm not. And I limped through it. And I think he liked that I had been a cop. And I think his idea was, and this is a lot the way the first one was, I think. Everybody knows that the first one was originally a Stallone movie, and they pivoted to Eddie Murphy, and it changed everything. That you don't have, I'm jumping all around, but Axel Foley changed cop movies for all time, right? You don't have John McClane if you haven't had Axel Foley first, right? You don't or Lethal Weapon. I get on the Zoom. I start pitching the story to him. He asked he asked a little bit about my old job. I said, look, I'm not going to try to write jokes for you because I wouldn't presume to do that. I'm just going to write you a cop movie. And he's like, that's perfect. That's what I want. Just write a movie that works as a cop movie, and then I'll bring the jokes. And it worked out. I got the job.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but when I think about my favorite movies, especially from the 80s as an 80s kid, I think about the music and the soundtracks and the songs. And so when you're writing Axel Foley, are you thinking like, okay, let's put Patti LaBelle stirred up in here, let's play the instrumental version right here?
100%. I mean, I didn't talk about it. I never talked about I didn't ever mention the Harold Faltermeyer thing, just assuming that's going to be there. But
yeah,
actually one of my favorite music cues in the whole movie is like the guy, the composer, Lorne Balfe, I think is his name. He, early on when he has had like an argument with his daughter and she leaves him, and he's walking over to his car and there's parking tickets on his car. he does like a plaintive kind of like a sort of a sad version of it, and it shouldn't work, but it totally does. Like I love that. And when I was writing it, I 100% said, this is where I would put Shakedown. Like this is where, and the two places that I would have gone for nostalgic stuff all the way, because I'm an old coot who likes all that stuff. But the helicopter sequence, they didn't go with there was not a needle drop there. That was like that was just sort of score, they call it, right? Where the guy's composing music for the scene. And then the sort of final gauntlet when he's got the truck and they're chasing, all the cop cars are chasing him to the big showdown in the mansion. They had Little Nas X, like he wrote a song for the movie that I actually thought was great. And he was at the premiere. I had no idea who he was. I thought if I had, I would have tried to like had my kids have a picture taken with him or something. But I just thought he was like he just was a really well-dressed young man. I thought he had like a sort of an interesting outfit. But yeah, I think that song is really cool.
I'm sure this varies from movie to movie, but how often are you on the set, and what's your role on a set once you've written it, for any changes that need to be made on the fly for a script?
It varies. Sometimes they hire you for what they call an all services thing, or they hire you by the week to come and fix scenes kind of on the fly. But most of the time for me, I'm long gone by the time they get to that part. There's a few Gangster Squad I was on the set the whole time. There's been a couple others, but for the most part, I might come for a visit, but I haven't done that. In television, you do more of that. In television, you're on set producing your episode of TV, or if you create the show, you're spending a lot of time on set. But movies are this like, they're in sometimes, I mean, they don't shoot as much stuff in LA as they used to. Beverly Hills Cop, they shot here because they had to. But Roadhouse, it will be in like the UK and like Finland and Vegas. So who knows, if I'll be around for that.
This might be the most important question of the podcast. Are you writing something right now where you need a small role for a sportscaster?
That is an important question. I frequently, here's what I'll tell you, is that I have aspirations to direct. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I feel like sometimes I'm getting a little long in the tooth. So I feel like maybe if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. But and oftentimes, Josh, I need on-air reporters to deliver exposition. They stand. So I'll definitely keep you in mind for.
I love this. Okay. All right. Let's just talk advice for those who want to become a screenwriter in general, especially if they have not done one yet, or if they're at the, I remember when I lived in Los Angeles, and it was so cliche, but it was true. You walk into a coffee shop and there's just people, typing away, working on the great next movie. What based on everything that you've learned through all the trials and tribulations, for someone who's just starting, what types of advice would you give about this is the best way to go about trying to get started as a screenwriter?
Well, not the way I did it, for sure, but I and you don't see as many people in coffee shops anymore because the business has contracted a little bit since the pandemic and for other reasons. But they still need people to do it. The path to becoming a screenwriter is actually well worn. And what you want to do is get a job as a production assistant somewhere on a TV show or a movie, which is where it's just the person who's going to pick up the muffins and food and make copies and all that stuff, anything anybody has to do. And you're hanging around as a production assistant. And then on it, hopefully, especially if it's a TV show, you can go from production assistant to what they call writer's assistant. which is the person who is the kid who's sitting in the writer's room at the big conference table, taking notes and transcribing all the story stuff people are coming up with on the fly, right? And then eventually, as a writer's assistant, over time, if you're lucky, they will give you, they have usually 1 or 2 freelance slots in a season for a TV show. And the showrunner will maybe give you a shot at one of those. If he likes what you did, they'll bring you on staff. And then you're a paid writer, and then you can, to me, I feel like if I had it to do over, well, I wouldn't change anything, but somebody who wants to do that, that's the way to do it.
When you're coming up with ideas, where do you come up with ideas? Are you constantly taking notes to this day with a journal or on your phone? Like, hey, I just thought of this funny joke for this potential movie somewhere down the line. How often are you just constantly thinking about scenes, dialogue, like what can be next in one of your scripts?
I mean, I do think about that a lot. I mean, as I'm driving around, it drives my family crazy because I'm spacing out while people are talking to me and stuff. But oftentimes sometimes I will think of an old movie that I love, and North by Northwest or The Naked Prey, some obscure movie, and I think about, well, what is it that I love about that movie, and what is it that makes it work, and could the mechanics of that movie work in a different genre? Or could you take that and put it in or could you take these components, the buddy part and the romantic part, and smush them together? That's a lot of what I do now. Is I have in my head this, like, because I have this wasted youth with comic books and movies and books, as we discussed earlier, sort of floating around back there, and I try, and I sometimes I'm thinking of ways to kind of like mash them together into something different. That's what I think. I definitely have done some of that for the Roadhouse movie. It's kind of a mashup of a lot of like great 80s martial arts movies that I loved. And yeah, so that's where I'm at now.
I like to wrap up this podcast by talking about other SDSU alums, giving them a shout out for what they've done that makes us proud. And so if there's anyone, past or present, from San Diego State who you'd like to give a shout out to, please do so.
Well, I mean, we talked about this a little bit, but I feel like it's for me, it's got to be Adrian Loudermilk, who was a beloved fellow Daily Aztec alum, who left around the time, I think he might have graduated when I did. And he went to Hollywood before I did. And he had, by the time I wrote LA Rex, he was a manager. He had sort of made himself into a talent manager. Really charming, funny, fun guy. He routinely would hit on my girlfriend of Libby that I mentioned earlier, and I would tell him, like, "Hey, dude, what do you do?" I know. I just could, like, and he was so charming, you couldn't get mad at him. For about 2 minutes after I published, or after I got the book deal and the movie deal on LA Rex, he was my manager. And then he died in a car wreck. I'm trying to think of what year that was. My God, 2005, maybe?
I want to say early 2000s. Yeah. I actually remember I happened to be in LA, and I remember you and I walked to an old-fashioned newsstand to get a copy of Variety magazine newspaper.
And he was in there.
To read the obituary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was just one of those, like, luminous personalities. I remember, and we lost him too young, and I still think about him to this day. I mean, look, all the people from the Daily Aztec were, it was such a blessing to have you guys in my life, and to still be in touch with you, and it was such a great time.
I remember Adrian went into a semester and he had no classes, so he had to crash every single class. I don't know if students still do this anymore, but you basically just showed up at the classes that you wanted, and you just kept showing up to every single class, and then you just hope that the professor would say like, okay, you can add this class. And so he had a T-shirt. He made like this T-shirt that said like, "I'm crashing your class." That was Adrian, right? His byline was H.A. Loudermilk, which I believe is Hans Adrian. We just all call him Adrian. Yeah. But it looked so official in the Daily Aztec. H.A. Loudermilk wrote this story.
Yeah, he definitely, yeah. And I mean, look, he for sure would have been one of the big manager agent for sure. If he had lived, he would have been a big deal in this town. I have no doubt of it.
Anything else that you would like to add that I should have asked that I forgot to ask about your journey and
well, I mean, I think that if you're thinking about doing this, I'm living proof that you don't need any talent to do it. I think that like if I can do this, anybody can do it. It's really just a matter of rewriting until you come up with something that like, they're happy with. And yeah, I've been really lucky.
Will is being humble. He is really talented, but the thing that I would like to add to the cherry on top is the questions I asked at the start of this podcast. I asked for a reason, because it's not an accident, because of the quantity of times that you spent reading, writing, something, anything. And I think that is just crucial. It doesn't matter how good it is, just do something, anything, just keep doing it over and over and over again. And so that's
for sure. For sure. I mean, and some of that, I mean, look, I mean, you played no small part in that. Like you had high expectations of us on the Daily Aztec and ran it like a business. And, I definitely felt prepared for like a professional writing job after I walked out of there, for sure.
All right. Well, this is sappy enough. So, Will, thank you so much for your time and your stories and continuing to make us proud for what you do, screenwriting.
All right. Take care, brother.
All right. Once again, that is Will Beall. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm your host for the Where You At podcast. Hope you enjoyed this one. I know that I did. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms, in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.